Not at all.
Not at all.
Hey, we are expanding the WCPT family.
Yes, we are.
And on October 28th, it's the debut of a brand new show called To the Right. Right here to the left.
To the left.
Screwing everything up. To the left.
I think our show just ended.
And we're done. So we're gonna
All of our listeners fell off their collective seats.
We're bringing in the conservatives here on WCB. No. It's
You know
to the
what?
left.
I'm trying to be the next Bobby Gentle.
Oh, my gosh.
God.
Okay, it's to the left. Why did I say to the right? Because I said it was going to be right here.
Right here. To the left of
Things
here.
are happening to my brain.
It's
called
okay.
To the
I
Left.
still love you.
To the left.
Mm-hmm.
With Sameena and Shana.
Everything you
With Sameena
own
and
in the
Shana.
box to the left. Oh, dear Lord. With Sameena Mustafa and Shana East. And they are here in studio right now. So let's see. There we are. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Of course, I screwed up your name, the name of your show.
Great to be back.
I know. Welcome back. I know, Sameena, we had you on a while ago, and you've been hitting up all the shows here at WCPT.
Yeah. I'm doing the circuit. But Shana.
And Shana, this is the first time, so
This
welcome.
is my first time, you guys.
On the radio?
Yeah.
Oh, good. We'll come. We're a good place for you to start.
Welcome. We're so excited about your new show, To the Left, which is starting on October 28th. It's going to air on Sundays at 1 o'clock.
Right after you guys.
Right after us. So is it from 1 to 3?
1 to 2.
1 to 2. Fabulous.
We are
Hopefully
baby
someday
steps.
we'll expand, but we gotta, rake in that support first.
Yeah.
I hear you.
I understand that.
Patreon.com
/To the Left Radio.
There we go. So what was the genesis of the whole show?
Well, I'll let Shana tell the saga, our origin story.
The origin
So
story.
a friend of mine who I met on the Bernie Sanders campaign is old friends with the general manager here, and they were talking about who has their finger on the pulse of the progressive world in Chicago, and she brought my name up and she proposed the idea to me. And I have a lot going on, so I was like, but this is such a great platform. This is such a good opportunity to get like underrepresented voices out there, people, candidates or activists that are not being heard of, not being covered by mainstream media. So I really considered it hard, and I thought, this is a big responsibility. There's financial responsibility and everything. So I thought bringing on a co-producer, co-host would not only add to the show, the content of the show, but help me, help with all the preparation, the booking and everything.
No, I get it.
And I first thought of Sameena because I met her when she was running for Congress recently, and I think she's amazing, and she's just the type of person that I would want to work with on a project because she would actually follow through and do the stuff she says she's gonna do, which is
That's
very
what
rare.
she does.
And
She's a follow-through.
She's great, and she's very funny as well. So I thought I could be my dorky self, and she wouldn't, look down upon me. So
Comedy. What about
we had a meeting about something else, and I randomly brought it up to her, and she was like, "Okay, yeah, that sounds good."
Yeah, no, and I have to say, to acknowledge Shana, is that she has been doing this work every day. I mean, she's been doing the activist work, whether it's on the Bernie campaign, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the subjects we want to tackle on the show, but that's where I felt like we were aligned, and so we have the same perspective, and we're bringing the same perspective of people that really need to be amplified, aren't being amplified, so it's up. We can do it. It's up to us. Instead of sort of complaining about it or saying it's not happening, how can we be part of the solution?
Right on.
So
Fabulous.
that's the show.
I love it. So what sort of voices are you hoping to amplify?
Well, Shana, would you like
Shana,
to?
go.
So I have an idea.
Introduce yourself to the world out there, because you're like, who is Shana East?
Shana.
Who is Shana East? Really?
I'm someone who speaks their mind every chance I get the opportunity. So we have a little idea for a segment called This Is What Intersectionality Looks Like. And as a member of the LGBT community myself, I think that we have the opportunity to, align with others doing this work. And I want to talk about Black Lives Matter had a list of demands that they brought up yesterday at a meeting, and I would like to share that with our listeners if
Yeah, go. Please,
Okay.
please.
So they want to enact Civilian Police Accountability Council ordinance, and you can look up the hashtag CPAC now. That has a civilian oversight of the police, which is very important. Number 2, reject any police union contract that protects bad policing over people. Number 3, say no to the $95 million police academy, and you can search hashtag #NoCopAcademy. That money can be used in our communities. Number 4, end the use of the CPD gang database. And number 5, divest from militarized policing and invest in black communities without displacing the members of that community. So I personally have committed to meeting with my alderman, Deb Mell, in the 33rd, and they are asking other people to meet with their alder people and bring up these demands. We can, I want you guys to think about donating to the Chicago Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, to Black Lives Matter Chicago, and to Southsiders Organized for Liberty, Unity and Liberation. They need printing donations, they need water donations, and they need people to be at the Van Dyke sentencing on October 31st, so take the day off of work.
On
and
Halloween.
Be down there to
On
show our
Halloween.
solidarity.
Yeah. No, and that's thank you, Shana, for that. But I think that's one of the things we were talking about before we were on air is thinking about how much of the intersectionality is needed in this fight. I mean, if you think about 30, 40 years ago, the LGBTQ community was a victim of bad policing, right? I mean, we had our own issues as a community dealing with policing, and so I think it's incumbent upon each of these communities that are affected by it to align themselves and realize that our liberation is a shared liberation. We can fight these fights together.
Right. We're stronger together, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I've said it all the time. The LGBTQ umbrella is a big one.
Yes,
We've
it
got
is.
one of everybody underneath there. And, an offense to one is an offense to all. Like, we are out there fighting for civil rights, so we need to be showing up for
right.
all civil rights.
Yeah, human rights.
Human rights.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly
So-
what's
And I heard Mary Morton's segment earlier, and I was bummed that I didn't get to see her, but she's an excellent example of doing that. That survey she was talking about earlier on your show, I mean,
Yep.
that's a really powerful example of, how is a community affected by race? How is a community affected by policing? How are public safety initiatives and dollars affecting the entire community? And so when we think about how we're going to frame these issues for the show, because it's back to the show, guys.
Yeah, no, yeah.
We got to talk about the show.
And what is that show?
Yeah, to the left.
And when is it going to be airing?
Sunday, October 28th at 1 o'clock. It will be
there
every
we are.
Sunday at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, there we are.
Right after Out Chicago.
Yeah.
No, that is a perspective I think that's valuable, and we feel like there are other folks who may do it in for a couple of different issues, or they sort of drill down and they focus on one thing. But we think, okay, well, there's issues like Black Lives Matter, there's issues like immigration, and bringing those leaders to the fore that don't have that platform, I think is so important. As someone who, as you know, ran and had very few platforms to share what I actually was running on, WCPT was one of the few spaces where I got to do that, thanks to folks like you and Ben Jarofsky. There were very few folks who wanted to hear about my race, except the fact that I was a lady. And then, I mean, I feel like I have to say the Jerry Lewis way, like a lady, because it was the only reason people cared I was running. It's like, no, I'm running not because I'm a lady, but because I'm sorry, I'll stop doing that.
That's all right.
Because there were real issues in my race that affected everybody, like what Mary's survey is just talking about. Healthcare is the number one issue. Why would that shouldn't surprise anyone. Our concerns, our experiences are unique, but our concerns, we have overlapping concerns. Our concerns align. Can we work on these things together? So when we can bring up these issues on the show and bring them to the fore, I think that will be something that more and more people will realize, okay, it's not about left or right. It's about, are we together as a community and really hearing each other?
And speaking,
okay, I'll get off my soapbox.
No, that's not. No. And speaking of together, did Mike Quigley, the incumbent, who of course, he not of course, but he ended up winning. Has he reached out to you and asked you about your platform and how he can incorporate it? No.
No, and I've reached out to his team because I was working on some things with gun violence, and I know that he, generally has a good record on that. But I would say, when it comes to some of these issues, other groups like the National Nurses United Union, which is a progressive nurses union, met with him on Medicare for All specifically, and he said, his team responded, "Oh, it's not feasible." And a few months later, fast forward, and even libertarians, I'm using air quotes, people who are listening at home.
Or they're watching on Facebook Live.
Like actual conservatives, like the Mercator Center, are figuring out how, they're realizing that, this would actually save us money. So how can you make a case against something that 85% of Democrats support, 70% of independents, and 52% of Republicans? So, I mean, these are the kinds of things that, it goes beyond an electoral cycle. It's about educating folks,
yes,
and
indeed.
reminding them that this is not just about getting a vote or pushing a platform. It's about educating folks, and that to me is the other piece of this show. Is that I think a lot of people are marching, going to protests, and are probably, frankly, exhausted already. But you talk to people who've been in this fight for 40, 50 years. You got to settle in for the long haul.
Mm-hmm. Right, like Heather Booth, who was were you at the march? Would you make it?
I didn't. I actually had to leave for a funeral, so I did get to stay for her talk.
But she's somebody that's been fighting.
That's a perfect example. Yeah, that's a perfect example of somebody who actually is like, I'm not giving up.
I know, and it really gives you, because she hasn't given up.
Yeah,
here she is, still fighting the good fight all these years later. So,
yeah. And there's people who are part of the Black community. They're seeing voting rights roll back in Georgia with Stacey Abrams, and Indiana. There was a purge of voters in Florida.
Yes.
There's that fight to let people who have been incarcerated get their voting rights.
The felons, because there's so many. I mean, they're out of jail. They've done their time.
That's also a national thing too.
Yeah, it is.
But particularly,
there's more of them in Florida, though.
The people that are in jail waiting to be bailed out, that don't have the money, the poor people who are in jail can't. They don't know that they can actually vote. So I have activist friends who are in the prisons, getting them registered.
Right, because they haven't been convicted yet.
Right.
Yeah, Chicago Votes is doing some great work on that. So, again, this just gives you a sampling of who we are, what our concerns are, things that we think about. And I think there's an audience for that focus and that perspective.
Oh, definitely, especially here on WCPT.
Yeah, absolutely. And so,
and we're going to have a lot of actionable next steps, like people who went to the protests. Like, what can they do next?
What do we do now? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like what I just said. These are a list of things to get you involved right now.
Action items.
We need to do more than just vote. We have to all become organizers and activists, and we're going to have those folks that we mainly don't hear from on mainstream media on our show to talk about their work as well. Hopefully people on the South and West Side that maybe don't get heard from as much on.
And also, Shana was in Europe recently, talking to people in Finland. The European left. You want to talk about that?
Sure. I was sponsored by a coalition of over 40 left parties in Europe to come to Finland to speak at a seminar and go to different towns and speak about how we're organizing movements and campaigns here in the U.S. And it became apparent to me through talking to everyone that I learned more in just a week being there about what's going on in the world politics than I've ever learned here.
Any nugget that you want to share, a specific one that really stuck?
Just the need to communicate, that I've started this group that we're having conference calls and learning each other's systems, electoral systems. They have healthcare there as a human right, so anyone can get healthcare. So they're showing that these policies that Bernie Sanders and others have proposed can actually happen. They're happening there.
And then can work and thrive.
Correct.
Yep.
And so we're doing these conference calls. We have one coming up. It is on the 21st, and it is about climate justice. So anyone can reach out to me through Scott and through the show, and you can join us and hear what activists in Europe are doing as far as climate justice, as well as activists in the United States. So
excellent.
All righty. Well, I'm super duper excited for October 28th for the launch of To the Left with Sameena Mustafa.
To the left, to the left.
And Shana East.
We just say To the Left with Sameena and Shana.
Sameena and Shana.
So poor guys like Scott Mustafa. Don't have to struggle with. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. My name is hard. I know.
No, it's not that bad.
I got
it's not
it.
that hard.
Sameena
Mustafa.
I know.
Is it Mustafa or
No,
Mustafa?
it's Mustafa.
No,
Mustafa.
actually, every time I come out with Ben, he asks me how to pronounce it, so I appreciate that.
We're just trying to be respectful.
No. I'm not calling you.
Thank you for pronouncing my name right, because almost
So-
no one
Shana.
gets it.
So
I've been-
thank
that's-
you.
Thank
I
you.
give a lot of props to Scott for reaching out. He asked me how.
Well, I reached out
Thank
to you
you.
first, and then I was like, okay, let me go, and you have it spelled out, and yeah, it was great. Anyway, can you two stick around?
Yeah.
Yeah, we should.
Fabulous, because we need to take a break. But when we come back, it is the final thrilling, show-stopping moments at Out Chicago,
Yes, it
right here on
is.
WCPT, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Ben Jarofsky.
Bruce Rauner's stance on marijuana. Ben, help out the listeners who may be unaware of Bruce Rauner's stance on marijuana.
Bruce Rauner has a very curious stance on marijuana for a guy who was a baby boomer, came of age in the 60s and the 70s. He's moving to the left these days, but it was adamantly opposed to the legalization of recreational marijuana. You remember what he said when he was on that downstate radio interview? What's the name of the station, D?
WJPF.
That's what I want to hear, right? He was, what did he say? Adamantly against it. I will know.
The Ben Jarofsky Show. Weekdays 2 to 5 p.m. on WCPT 820.
This is Bill Niesman, business manager of IBEW Local 9. You probably don't realize this, but we're actually with you from the moment you wake up, delivering power from the substation to your home. We're there when you leave for work, at every intersection, lighting your way and even easing congestion, controlling the reversibles onto Kennedy. We're keeping you safe with traffic lights and cameras, as well as upgrading your cell reception. Local 9 linemen are there protecting you and your family 24/7. But we don't just stay close to home. Recently, hundreds of our members were in Puerto Rico and now South Carolina, helping to restore power to thousands of families. So next time you stop at a traffic light, pass under a power line, or simply pull into your brightly lit neighborhood after a long day at work, think of the friends you didn't even know you had at IBEW Local 9. We'll continue to light the way for you. Meet us online at ibew9.org.
Attention! This is an important medical announcement. Have you or a loved one been prescribed Onglyza or Comboglyze XR to control high blood sugar with type 2 diabetes? You may be eligible for substantial money damages if you have suffered heart failure, congestive heart failure, cardiac failure, or even death while taking Onglyza or Comboglyze XR. The FDA has issued a safety alert after a clinical trial linked Onglyza and Comboglyze XR to an increased risk of heart failure. Call the Drug Watch hotline now to protect yourself and fight for the compensation you deserve. If you or a loved one has been prescribed Onglyza or Comboglyze XR, you may be entitled to substantial compensation for those injuries. Call the Drug Watch hotline now to protect yourself and fight for the compensation you deserve. Call 800-510-9655. 800-510-9655. 800-510-9655.
Did you ever ride your bike with a clothespin and a baseball card? Or use a typewriter for a school paper? Then here's a timely alert. Americans born from 1945 to 1965 are 5 times more likely to have hepatitis C, which often has no symptoms, but is a leading cause of liver cancer. The good news? Treatments are available that can cure hepatitis C. Talk with your doctor about getting a blood test for hepatitis C. Know for sure. A message from the CDC.
LGBTQ community.
Welcome back. I'm Fazia Mirza. You're listening to Out Chicago on WCPT.
And welcome back to Out Chicago.
On earth was that?
Wait, is this the segment that's called To the Right?
Yeah.
No, that was
No.
that's Trump ordering a BLT sandwich. He's like, you can never like, can I get an LG BLT? LG BLT. Yeah, no. We play all of his little kerfuffles on our little show
Yeah.
here.
Nice.
Yeah. Hey, this is Scott Duff. If you're just joining us, I'm with Ellen Miller, of
Yes,
course.
indeed.
And in the studio are the hosts of the brand new show that's going to be starting right here on WCPT 820 on October 28th at 1 o'clock. To the left with Sameena and Shana. So thank you so much for sticking around. We're happy to have you here.
Yeah, no, thanks for having us. And we can just do a little plug on who we're going to have on the first show.
Yeah,
Of
please.
course.
So, I don't know if the Facebook Live viewers at home can see, but we're going to be having Maria Haddon, who is, if elected, would be the first black queer alderwoman on the north side.
Yeah. What ward is she in?
49th.
49th
So
ward?
Rogers Park, basically.
Rogers Park.
And we're also going to have Erica Nanton, who is an activist. She works with Chicago Votes. But she's been somebody who both Maria and Erica have actually worked together on issues like police accountability. And to me, Maria's a candidate now, but this is something that they've been working on for a long time and working on progressive issues. And to me, they're a perfect sort of like matching set of voices that need to be amplified. And that's one of the big things that we feel like could be done better on the progressive side, is that, we know where we stand on the issues, but are we elevating, especially voices of women of color, especially black women? And I think that is something that I see it all the time. And I think sometimes I myself, as a brown woman, sometimes have an opportunity to speak up and should use that privilege. And that's why I think having folks like Maria and Eric on the show are going to be so important, because we can't always speak for other people. We need them to speak for themselves.
I mean, we talked about that after the last election. We need to have people that look like us, that sound like us, that represent us. When you saw what happened with the Kavanaugh, I mean, weren't you just watching that the Republican, even the Democrats, they had two women, but there was no one of color. There was, the Republican Judiciary Committee was old, white men. And I just got more incensed by the minute. Just not that was just an example of it. But I hope, they say that the right has been emboldened by the Kavanaugh hearings as well. But I'm hoping that we on the left are going to come out with all guns blazing because of what we witnessed and what we've been witnessing. As far as representation, it's not there for us.
Yeah.
And it should be. It's wrong.
So much of what happened to Anita Hill in 91, and I remember that, which is another way to say I'm a little older.
I remember it too. Yeah. I watched it. We sat around the TV at work and watched it.
I'm her poise, her grace, her resilience, her strength. It blows me away. She was interviewed recently by John Oliver, and I don't know if you saw.
I didn't see it, but I'm sure it was amazing.
She actually was interviewed back in July, and I think it was maybe a few weeks after Kavanaugh was nominated. And I can't remember if the sort of the accusations had come out when that interview was taped, but her she just had this feeling, this energy that said, we can't give up. And yet she was destroyed, just destroyed.
Horrible.
The first time I heard her speak actually was, it's funny, Mary Morton was on at the luncheon for Chicago Foundation for Women a few years ago, and I don't think there was a dry eye in the joint, because everyone was just so moved by her. But that, again, it goes back to, it's like, Christine Blasey Ford spoke up bravely, but it's like that path was blazed, that trail was blazed by a black woman.
Yeah.
And we are, I see a lot of people sending letters to Dr. Ford, which they should, but it's like, Anita Hill was there first.
Yeah. Yeah,
so let's not forget
that. It was a crime what happened to her.
The same with the Me Too movement, how it's being attributed to white, celebrities, but it's actually Tarana Burke who started it, who I just had the honor of seeing speak last week down at the School of the Art Institute, and she wants to, recenter this discussion around black women and black girls, which is why she came up with the whole Me Too movement initially. So it's sort of like exactly what's mirroring with what happened with Anita and Blasey Ford now as well.
Right. And that I think, the one other piece of the Kavanaugh hearing, which I actually wrote about this in a blog called Millennial Politics, so it's on my Facebook page, is there were enough things about Kavanaugh that we knew that were problematic. He was basically a Federalist Society fabrication. He was.
They molded him
completely.
For this.
We knew how problematic he was, and so the fact that there were any Democratic senators saying, "Oh, well, I'll let me talk to him. Let me," they're sort of waffling. And Susan Collins, I know everyone wants to go after her. But Joe Manchin.
Joe Manchin.
I mean, like, this is, why do we always attack women for abandoning women when we don't even hold members of our own party accountable?
You're right. He deserves every bit of wrath that he's not getting, she's getting.
And I even said, all these people who are giving money to Susan Collins' sort of imaginary Democratic opponent, I said, how are you going to make sure that you don't elect another Joe Manchin? Just because they are a Democrat, like a dino, a Democrat in name only. And so when I said that, people were like, oh, you don't get it. You have to be strategic. We need a majority in the Senate. And I'm like...
But Paula Jean Swearengin ran against him, and the Democratic Party turned their back on her. So
right. And she was incredibly progressive. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that is one of those things where the proof is in the pudding. It's when we had both houses, when we had the White House, what did we do? What do we do for immigrants? What do we do on these issues? Why wasn't that an opportunity to repeal the Hyde Amendment? Like what did our leadership mean when we had it? So the question is, once we so that's what I'm saying. Like, okay, everyone's talking about what's going to happen when the Democrats take the House. What are you going to do with it?
Right.
So that's where I think there's a lot of rhetoric about what we are against, but what are we for?
Good point.
And that, again, back to the show.
No, exactly.
Is essentially educating people. Here's what is an issue maybe you don't have a lot of information about. I mean, going to a Wikipedia page is not always a reliable way to educate yourself on an issue. And understandably, there's a lot of people who are suspicious of news sources. Understandably, we have really had a failure before 2016 and since 2016 of media, sort of mass and established media not holding folks accountable or really giving us the full picture. Mm-hmm. And so, I look at even what's happening since Rahm decided not to run. It's like this revisionist history. It's like, where were you guys? What are you talking about now? And so when we come back to issues like CPAC and Black Lives Matter, why are you rewriting history? Rahm, we knew who Rahm was.
Yeah, we did.
Mm-hmm. But part of it was nobody was reporting on what Rahm did in Washington, what Rahm did in the Clinton administration, what Rahm did as the head of the DCCC, which is the Congressional Campaign Committee. All of these things, if you would put all those things together, who Rahm was as our mayor,
is who he was.
None of this should have surprised anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
But that to me is what I'm realizing now. And part of it was I was a voter and a citizen. I never missed an election. But I realized how much did I sort of assume that blue is fine and that I should accept it. And that's where my values are going to be best represented. And I'm realizing let's not shame people who decided that a party that has been part of systematic oppression and wants to say, no, we're the party of people of color. But Daley was a Democrat. Mm-hmm. Both Daleys were Democrats. Rahm's a Democrat. I mean, all you have to do is travel to the south and west sides of this city.
It's like two different cities we live in, for sure.
And it's been that way for 50 years. It has. So stop telling me and us that's good enough.
Do you have a mayoral candidate that you're hot on?
Oh my God.
I do.
Okay. But here's the thing. I think there are some really great progressive folks running, but I think there are some real challenges in terms of building a bench on the progressive side. Mm-hmm. Because part of what is going to be important in this race is not just money, it's going to be real capacity. Mm-hmm. Do you have somebody in those 77 neighborhoods of Chicago?
Yeah.
How many precinct captains do you have? So, I mean, there are people who align with my values. There are a couple of people who align with my values, but there are very few people who I think can overcome some of the people who have the money and the name.
I'm supporting Amara Enya wholeheartedly.
All righty. Hey, we've got a caller on the line that is very excited about your show. So go get them. So, Vicki, welcome. You're on Out Chicago. Hello.
Oh, good morning, family.
Good morning, Vicki.
Hi, Vicki.
Hi, Vicki.
Listen, I listen every Sunday. I rarely call, but what drove me to call this morning is I heard you talk about black women. We don't say a whole lot, but I want you guys to know we've got your back. We are not watching these polls. We are going to the polls. We are knocking on doors. And so even though, I know my next door neighbors are married lesbian women, and they've been so worried and upset since Kavanaugh. For some reason, I just feel like the power of the people will win this. And so I just want you to be encouraged and know we've got you the way you've had us. Okay?
Oh, Vicki, thank you,
Vicky,
so much.
I'm with Vicky because, they say it's close, and I don't care what the polls say. We know how the polls worked last in 2016. I think women are really ready to go out and express themselves in the voting booths all over the country. Republican, independent, Democratic women. That's my hope. I do. I feel it.
Yeah. And I think the other piece that we need to remember, especially what you're seeing across the country, is not just voter suppression, but also voter disenfranchisement.
Mm-hmm.
So when you feel like a party or elected officials aren't listening to you, and you're sort of like, it doesn't make a difference. I was literally having this conversation yesterday as we were getting ready to go to the march yesterday, speaking to a young man who actually grew up in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
He's a Muslim young man, and he was saying, like, well, it doesn't make a difference. I voted for Bernie in the primary, and then that went away, and like, these guys don't do anything. And I was like, do you realize you're speaking as somebody who grew up in Saudi Arabia, where there is no and there are other countries where we don't have those rights. But he brought up an excellent point, which is if you look at countries like India and other democracies where there is a vibrant democracy, where there's more than two real parties that have a chance at winning elections, or you have to build coalitions. Obviously, it's a slightly different political model, but you actually have a lot of choices and reasons to come together and think about, like, how are we coalition building? How are we coming together on issues? And what do we bring to the table? And so when somebody has that experience of being from another country, it's really, I think it's an important point. Yeah, we don't have as vibrant democracy as we could.
Yes, so we are so excited for your show. And I'm like, that's great. Sameena, she's just going off. But we're up against it's the end of the show already.
Oh, we can't talk to Sylvia about freeing the slaves.
I know.
Oh, well.
But I do love it when Sylvia calls.
Yes,
God
thanks for
love her.
calling,
Thank you
Sylvia.
for calling, Sylvia. Unfortunately, we can't give us a call next week. That's the end of another Out Chicago. I want to thank all of our guests, Mary Morton, Gary Griffin, Noah LaPook, Sameena Mustafa, and Shana East. And their brand new show, To the Left, is going to be on October 28th, right after us at 1 o'clock. So tune in for that. We're very, very excited.
Can't wait. Congratulations, ladies. It's going to be
We'll
great.
bring mimosas.
And fabulous. Eli, I want to thank Eli, who's been doing all of our stuff on Facebook Live. I want to thank Lady B, who's been our technical producer. Ella Miller as our amazing co-host. And I am Scott Duff. And until next week, stay proud.
Stay proud.